it might sound crazy, but it was moving to the beat of our music. I said, "Holy crap! What is that?" And I'm like, "There's something over there." What I never believed in. That's when I saw it. It stood up.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Monster 911. If you're new to the channel, my name's Lance. I travel, interview, and investigate from all over the country, exposing a truth and giving a voice to courageous eyewitnesses who have experienced the unimaginable. The existence of paranormal entities, creatures that are very much alive in isolated areas across the United States. Today's show is going to be part 2 of the last show, Terror on the Oklahoma WMA. Now, if you haven't seen the last show, go ahead and go back and watch the last show, and that way you can come to this one and it'll tie in and it'll all make sense. This show wasn't really planned, but I did want to get it out to you guys as soon as possible. Over the years since I've been interviewing folks, since 2017, I've interviewed many people. I have found that when you have 2 or more people in a group, usually you have one that wants to share. They want to find out, why did I see it? What was it? I got to tell somebody. And so they're looking for commonality. They're looking for someone that they don't have to convince, that especially someone that's had their own experiences. And so that person will share, like people do with me on this program. But then the remaining people, you have still an aspect of this psychological aspect, and then one of logistics. The psychological aspect, the reason why the remaining people don't want to share, is that a lot of people get angry. They don't want to believe what they saw was real. And to some people, they get frustrated. They don't want to relive that account. And it's too frightening to believe what they saw was real. So they just don't want to talk about it. And rightly so, I understand. The logistics part, is really just people move off. People get married, change their name, they move away, and so it's really hard to contact them. But today, we had the ex-boyfriend of the young lady that I interviewed from that last show, and he actually heard the show, and so he contacted me, and I did an interview with him this week. I was in the process of getting the next show ready for you guys next week, and I thought I'd put this one on quickly since it was kind of fresh in everybody's minds. And so I did an interview with him, and he wanted to share from his perspective what happened the day of terror on the Oklahoma WMA.
And I'm the ex-boyfriend, and this is a place that we frequented regularly because our favorite thing to do is it's awesome, man. We'd let the dogs out and put them behind the Humvee, and we'd let them run behind the Humvee. Obviously not like driving full speed or anything, but we'd just pretty much, that was our kind of getting away time. Some people go out to bars, some people go to movies. We'd get in the Hummer and we'd go let the dogs walk behind the truck, and that's where they love to go. And we would just drive around, and we found some really good spots out there, and we've frequented this place, I mean, sometimes every weekend. And now I know, obviously, if you live in Oklahoma right now, it wasn't a regular January, or it wasn't January like this January. It was a warm January, so we just basically had hoodies on. It was still nice outside. And I took 2 of my friends out there with me and my girlfriend, and we found this really good spot. Which I wasn't as prepared as my girlfriend was with all the maps and everything, but you could kind of see where on the map it was a place, but it's not by any means a beginner's place to go. You got to cross, I'm just going to guess 12, maybe 13 creeks to get there. Some of the creeks that you got to cross, I know 2 of them that the water is almost all the way up to the driver's side window.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, you can't most when we first started going there, my girlfriend was like, man, you can't go through that. And I'm like, yeah, we can. And
Wow.
we'd go through it. And we found this perfect spot that had a big clear pond, and not a pond, it was just a big clear spot where the waterfalls went down. And it's on a creek, all no sand, no rocks, not, it was just all like flat granite. And the water right there on that creek is only about maybe ankle deep, if that,
Mm.
at the time. And so we'd take the Hummer down there, and we'd park right by this place where you could, in the summertime. Now, obviously, January you're not jumping off and going swimming, but that's where we swam a lot. And it's definitely, like I said, not a beginner spot. It's out in the nobody knows where it is. To get to where we were, it's a good 45-minute drive.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and now everything I'm explaining to you is as the crow flies. If you looked at it at a map from up above, from
Right.
from if you looked from up above, it looked like it's a 10-minute walk, but it's not by any means. So there's all kinds of different roads down there, and they have every creature, as we're going to talk about. They have every creature that you could think about on the property, from elk to bear to all that. But and again, I've never seen an elk or a bear there, but I know that they're there.
Mm.
And so we would uh, we would go there quite often. And with regular visitors. It's only a 30-minute drive from my house. And once you hit the WMA, you can drive for 6 hours all around these different roads, and drive all day long. But we had the one certain place that we'd go to. And we went down there one day with two friends of ours and the puppy dogs. And we'd set up right on the creek, right there on the flat rock, because, like I said, some of the creek's really wide, and then it comes down to little. But where we were, it was just small creek. You mean you could step across it without getting your shoes wet.
Okay.
So
So the
we
creek bed, so I get an understanding. Sorry to interrupt. The
no,
creek,
go ahead.
the bottom of the creek has rocks on it, like slate and sandstone or something like that.
Yeah, I'd like sand. I don't think it was sand. I don't think it's sand, because it's down more towards the. It's down low. It's more kind of towards the. You can't really say mountains, but down towards mountainous area. I think it's a
Okay.
limestone or something. But it's like the slates of rock down there are like, there might be a rock that's the creek bed that's as long as a football field,
Gotcha.
and it's just flat.
Okay. Please
And so
continue. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, you're fine. So we were sitting right down there by the waterfall where we always sit. And I would say from where we're sitting up to where the creek goes down and turns. I'm an avid deer hunter,
Hmm.
and I was a hunting guide for years in Alaska. And so I'm good on my yardage. So, and in fact, I've yarded that thing before when I was bow hunting. So where the creek turns is 150 yards. That's right where it turns from
Okay.
where we were sitting. It was 150 yards, about 140, 150 yards. And so we just, and like in the previous episode, you can't camp there, but you're more than welcome to day camp there. If that's the term need to use, day camp. And so we would bring one of those little bitty small charcoal grills, the little round ones you get at the dollar
Mm-hmm.
store. And we'd go down there and cook. So we were sitting down there, and I'm a musician, and my friend that was with me, he's a musician. So we'd take our instruments out there, and the puppy dogs and the girlfriends, and we'd go out there and sit. And that's exactly what we were doing. We drove down there. And so where my truck was, where my truck was parked, it was off of the road, because you had to go off the road. there's a road that goes through it over the creek, but once you get to the creek that we were on, and there's several creeks. I don't know if there's different names for them or what, because you mentioned to me something when we had a previous conversation about you found the name of the creek, but I don't know. There's no signs that say the
Sometimes
name.
it's hard because you've got like branch off a branch off a branch of a creek.
That's exactly how this is.
Yeah,
That,
yeah.
that's exactly how this is. So anyway, we called it our secret spot.
Oh,
We're at our secret spot, sitting by the pond, and the creek does flow through the pond, so we just called it the pond.
mm,
So we were sitting there, and we had the charcoal grill going with wood just to have a fire, and the dogs were just laying around, and we were just sitting there playing music, having a good time, and drinking a Dr. Pepper and enjoying the day. And we were playing music, and I saw I saw something. I looked. Let's see, which way. I looked to the east, which way the creek from where we were. It was
okay.
looking east, and that's where the creek bends. And it was about 15, 20 foot this side of the creek. So I'm going to say we were about 75 to 100 yards away. And all I can think of now is what I saw, because first I thought I saw horns. And what I've realized now, it was like branches being moved.
Mm.
And that's, I told my girlfriend, I said, I think I just saw an elk. But then I didn't see nothing except something that looked like horns, but it was branches move. And then we just kind of forgot about it, and sat there and kept playing music. Well, as we're sitting there playing music, everybody going about their business, I'm in the middle of a song, and I've been playing long enough. I don't have to look at my guitar to play. I'm looking down the creek while we're playing a song, and right up under this tree, hunched up, couldn't tell what it was, hunched up, sitting on its butt, and you could. I saw what looked like kneecaps and legs up, and like something, like if you was going to go without a chair or something, sit up underneath a tree.
Okay.
That and I saw that, and we were playing, and I kept playing my guitar, and I noticed that it wasn't windy, so the trees weren't moving. I sat there, and I saw something underneath that tree, and it was. It might sound crazy, but it was moving to the beat of our music, because we had guitar and we had a little hand drum there, a djembe, and this thing was
I'm sorry, what was that again? That last instrument?
a djembe. It's a 8-inch round drum. It's like a bongo without two of them.
Okay, I didn't. Okay, okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So it's like a bongo without, and we're sitting there, and we're just we're playing music, and I saw this object underneath the tree moving, and I could tell that it wasn't connected to the tree, because all the trees back there's not any like real big oaks or nothing like that, because this is up on top of a big hill. It's all kind of smaller trees, and I could tell that it wasn't part of it. And I stopped real quick, and I put my guitar down on the ground, and I'm like, well, what? I said, holy crap, what is that? And I'm like, there's something over there. And that's when I stood up and I started walking, and I walked about 10 foot. I walked like about 10, 15 foot. And that's when, what I never believed in, that's when I saw it. It stood up, and it stood up. The head turned and looked our direction, like it knew that we noticed it.
Mm.
And I mean, it looked right at me, and I could see its eyes. They didn't have any weird color to them or nothing. It just looked like, I could tell that they were eyes in the head. And it stood up, and just like my girlfriend's explanation, and I can't explain it. I mean, I couldn't explain it any better. It was Chewbacca off of Star Wars.
Oh,
Yeah, and all it
wow.
did, it stood up, wasn't hunched over, no monkey arms, no nothing like that. It stood up like a grown man and just walked, didn't run, just took a few steps, and it didn't take many steps. That's what was weird. I'll tell you, I'll finish that. It just stood up and walked right across the creek, which the creek is about 15 foot wide, maybe 20. And when on the other side of the creek is where it comes down, because the first parts of when you go into the creek from the north side, it's a gradual slope, but once you get to the other side of the creek, it's like 10-foot tall hill, or not even a hill, I guess, because a hill would have an inclination. It's like a cliff.
So this is like a steep dirt cliff,
at least 10-15 foot tall
to the creek bank.
To the creek bank. I couldn't get up it if I wanted to.
I know exactly. Yes, I know exactly kind of what I've had to get up those, and they will take all day.
Yeah, and so this thing stood up and walked right across the creek and went right up that thing like it was no problem. And I don't remember seeing it that used its hands or what. I just remember this thing walked across the creek. And one thing I do remember, like I said, the creek's probably about 15 to 20 foot wide. It only took about 3-4 steps for this thing to get across. And it went right across the creek and right up that hill. And the way this wildlife management area is, the game wardens, they come in, and throughout this whole WMA, every, say, like 300 yards to 500 yards, maybe even more, they take a whole swath out and they just mow it down. So you hunters can get in there and, sit in a tree stand, if you can find a tree to put a tree stand in, and they got this whole field to hunt. Mm-hmm. So that was from the creek to that open spot that they cut. There was probably about 15 to 20 foot of heavy brush to get to the open spot. Well, where we were sitting, I walked down and I started to see that. And once we saw it, my friend, I broke my back not too long ago, and this was close to that time. I wasn't running, but he took off running down to where we saw it, right there in the glen where you go up to get to the open spot. That's where my girlfriend went, and she went that way to go up into the open spot, went to the little walkway area, which from the truck to the opening is probably 60 foot. That, I mean, you can be there quickly, instantly, just a few steps. And that's where she went. And my friend's girlfriend, who was with us, she's a California girl. She didn't even get out of her chair. She stayed right there. But me and my friend, he ran down there, and I was close behind him. And I went right to the exact spot where I saw him cross.
Okay.
And there was only one, because that's how long his strides were, or he just, or he probably stepped in more, but there was a big old footprint, and you could tell that it was a footprint, but it was on, like I said, it was on a granite or whatever kind of stone. It was on a big stone, and it just flat. And so it didn't make an impression or nothing, but you could tell it was a footprint.
So you're saying it was a wet watermark of a footprint on the stone. It was wet as it was going through the creek, and there was a spot that was relatively dry, and when it stepped on that flat rock, you could see its footprint. And you even said that you could see some of the hair around the footprint.
Oh, you could tell it was a footprint with hair. Yes, sir. And that's
wow.
That's let you know how big of a stride this thing had, because like I said, the creek right there where he walked across, he, she, whatever, whatever we saw, we'll just say where Chewbacca walked across, the creek was only about 5 foot wide, and there was only one footprint. and then he went right to the right to where he went up. It went up to the side of the hill. It was right there, and I was so freaked out that I didn't look for, you know, signs of whatever going up the side of the hill. I didn't look for that, but I mean, it was at least a minimum 10 foot straight up vertical.
So you did when you say you didn't look for additional prints or branches broken or anything like that. You just were kind of in that moment, just like, what did I see? And
What did I see?
and
Yeah,
you said too, just prior to this, and then I'll let you get back, that you didn't believe in this stuff. You were one of those guys that, it's all kind of a fantasy, fairy tale campfire story, but you didn't believe in Sasquatch or Bigfoot, and then you saw this, and you're still freaking out, and
yeah,
your buddy took out, and you're kind of following where this thing went down this creek. So
yeah. We weren't too far away from each other. He ran up there. I kind of walked real fast, so we weren't far away from each other.
okay,
And I don't even think I went 100. It wasn't even. It was about 100 yards from the truck. And out there, there's so many game trails that, I mean, it's like there's game trails everywhere
oh, I
out
can
there.
imagine.
Yeah, so it's really populated place for hunting, and there's a lot of animals out there. So, there all we saw was that footprint, that you call them the watermark. That's all we saw was that watermark. But I definitely saw him, and so did my buddy, and so did my girl. But she ran up, and she went up into that field,
That open area.
the open area right there.
Okay.
She went up into that. Now where she went into that, I don't know, because you can't see through there. Like I said, there's about a 15, maybe 20 foot wide. And this is one of those places, if you don't know it, if you walk out in the woods there's a lot of people that's got lost out there and have to call people, and
I believe it. And it's
yeah,
one of those things where I almost analogize it to, I remember, on these Oklahoma bridges, you're looking down in river bottoms where you can
yes
look into
sir.
those tamaracks, and you've got, all the hardwoods and cedar, and it looks pretty thin from the bridge. But when you actually get down in those river bottoms and those creek bottoms, I mean, it's like Cambodia. It
It's
is,
not. It's not thin.
no,
It,
no,
it's
it's
not.
not.
No, it's not thin at all. And like my son, my middle son, he's an avid hunter, and right here by where I live, on not too far from where I'm at, the Verdigris River, that's where he goes and hunts a lot. And that's here. This isn't where we're talking about, but he hunts out there, and I've been out there a million times and never seen one. And he's gone out there 3 deer seasons in a row and shot big giant pigs,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I've never seen one out there, but he's harvested 3 of them. So this part of Oklahoma, man, when it gets dense, it gets dense.
Yes, it does. And you hit it on the nail on the head. If you go out into these locations, you can get turned around real fast, and
Yeah,
you can get lost if you're not careful. And that's
yeah,
why I always tell people, if you go out, go as a group, but you don't want to separate really at all, and because you can get turned around. And like you said, there's a million. You get on those WMAs, and not any one particular, but you get on any WMAs, and typically it's one road goes to another road, and they're never well marked, and they're supposed to be here and there, and they've got a map. I know the one in southeast Oklahoma that we go to. It reminds me of the anatomy books when I was studying anatomy in school, and just trying to memorize all of the vessel system of all the veins and arteries and all the branches, and going through the gross anatomy courses. It's like reading a map of that. It's
well,
just one road after the other, after
right.
the other, after the other.
And like on this specific place, like I said, we frequented it all the time. So I mean, we probably had been there 100 times. And I know the roads like the back of my hand there, but once it turns dark, it's like the trees cave in on you. And there's no lights out there. There's no nothing. And it's like at nighttime, I've almost gotten lost after being there 100 times on a road, a dirt road.
Right.
So, and it's really, I think the reason why the animals are so good, you can drive a vehicle back there, but you're not allowed to have four-wheelers or motorcycles. And if you don't have a hunting license, you're not allowed to be on it. And so it's real. I mean, it's like only professional hunters and people that are serious, go out there. When I say we're out in the middle of nowhere, if you look at the crows as the crow flies, if you looked at it from Google Space, you'd think you could be able to walk right to the gas station down at the bottom of the hill in 15 minutes. But no, it's not like not like that at all.
Yeah, I totally concur with you on that. I've had people, I had buddies say, "Oh, that's not too far. I'll just walk from my deer stand to your deer stand. We're down on a river bottom or wildlife management area or wherever." And then they ended up getting a little bit lost and they go, "Dang, that's a lot farther than what I thought." I said, "Well, you've got to figure in the terrain is uphill and downhill and across creeks and rocks, and it's
Yeah.
pretty steep, and it looks a lot different when you're on ground level."
Well,
Everything.
me and you had a conversation before we did this show, and you told me that you had a Jeep and
Yes.
raised up and all that. If you'd never gone through it before, you'd look at the first creek that you've got to cross, and you'd be like, "No, I ain't going to try that. We ain't going to make it until you've done it a couple times." Because I'm telling you, the water comes up to your window. So this ain't a place that people just go.
Yeah, yeah. You've either got to be. When we were talking, I was making fun that you either have to be dropped in by helicopter, or
Yes, sir.
you got to be you got to know your vehicle really, really well. And that's a good point. Is that it's a vehicle that's a four-wheel drive 4x4. It's kind of like, to me, comparison to a firearm. You can get in the car and you can drive the truck or the SUV or Jeep or whatever you got, but that doesn't mean you know how to really drive it.
Right.
You got to know how it feels and how it grips, and you got to know the weight and what it feels like when you're slipping. And if you got lockers on, do you not have lockers, helical diff, whatever, and you got to know how to drive it, because each car is a little bit different, just like a firearm and like anything else. Everything,
Yes,
you
and
just got to know it.
that's how it is there. So I mean, because like we'd go back there in the woods and we'd sit all day and never see. Like I said, out of 100 times, I probably only saw one truck go past us in 100 times.
Wow. So let's go back. Your buddy is in front. He's running after, and there's this thick patch of woods between you and your ex-girlfriend. She ran in the open area, which she did say she did. And
Right.
she said that when she was in this open field, she was yelling to you guys to come this way. "Hey, y'all, come back this way toward me." Did you ever hear her yell that to you guys? Yelling? Could you hear her at all?
No, because we were down
In
we
that.
were down in the creek and the water. And we're right by a waterfall, so it's making noise, and we're talking back and forth to each other. And if she's up there in that field, she's got to talk through 20 feet of brush.
Okay. Okay. So that's why she could hear you guys, but because of the creek, kind of that waterfall effect, there's water down there, and you guys are in a bottom area compared to her. She's more up on top.
Yeah, it's a good grade going up. So and like I said, she was probably another 100 yards from us with heavy bush between us.
So once you saw this Sasquatch, and it just kind of went up the bank, that dirt bank, real quick. Did you see anything else at that point?
my friend or myself didn't see anything. The only thing I saw that day was Chewbacca stand up underneath a tree, look at me, walk real slowly, and climb right up the side of that 10-foot, 15-foot hill, and he was gone.
Did your buddy that was with you and that his girlfriend that was from California, did they see this Chewbacca looking Sasquatch as well?
He saw something going up the hill. He didn't see it walk across. He ran down there, but he's the one that said, "Look, there's a footprint," and she didn't even
Oh,
go. She didn't. She was too busy on her phone. She didn't even get. She didn't even get out of her chair. So it was just me and him. And but my girlfriend at the time, she walked up right that way into the field, and we were already walking down the creek, so we didn't. I knew where she was going, but we didn't see. I don't know how far she went in or what she went in, and so she likes to take off and go walking and everything. So we walked down there and saw the footprint, and everybody says, "Look, why don't you have pictures? Why don't you?" And I'm like, "Well, we're at the creek. When you go to the and one thing, cell phones don't work out there. There's no signal whatsoever out there. And so when we go to the creek, we just leave our cell phones in the car. So we walk back to the fire, and we're standing there, and that's what was weird is, I mean, usually my dogs didn't even freak out. But they didn't even act like nothing was there. We went back to the fire, and my dogs were laying there, and we just stood by the fire. And then I walked around to the back of the truck because I was going to walk up there and go see where she was. And when I got on the other side of the creek, right to where the road stops, she comes running out of the woods, and I mean, she's pale as a ghost, and she's shaking, and she's saying, she's like, something chased me. Something was chasing me. Whatever we saw, is that what chased you? And she said, no. Whatever you, because she saw it too. She's like, whatever we saw walk across the creek, just walk straight across through the clearing, right into the
mm,
woods.
okay.
And she said something else that didn't even look like that came out of the woods at her.
Mm, yeah, that's the part. And so when you saw her, um,
She was
she
scared.
she was scared and she was running up to you guys.
Yeah, and she's the most honest person in the world I've ever met. Man, she don't make up nothing. She doesn't tell no stories. I mean, she was scared, and she was like physically shaking, like she was freezing
Wow.
cold. I mean, she was scared.
So you guys had a firearm or a couple firearms, and then did you look for this whatever was
It's
chasing her?
it's Oklahoma. I got a firearm sitting next to me right now, man.
I,
Yeah.
I'm with you, brother. But go ahead.
So I had it sitting in the because we left the doors open on the Hummer. So I walked her. She came down and she was scared, shaking, and I said, "Go sit by the fire." I walked like 2 foot to my door, grabbed my gun, stuck it on my hip, and me and my buddy ran up the little road. About, I mean, I'm telling you, it's only like, I mean, probably about the length of your hallway, maybe two of your hallways in your home. Went up there into the field, and there was no signs of nothing. There was no sound. There was no anything. There was no movement in the woods. There was nothing. I mean, it was just like an empty field. There was nothing.
Wow. Wow. So that does corroborate what she was saying, that she saw this Sasquatch. She said there was no hump on it. It was tall. It was kind of lean, and it was a dark brown, um, and to blackish, and that it moved across the field, going left to right, coming out of the tree line, walking, and it was in the open. Never looked at her that she could tell, and walked kind of at a little bit of a diagonal, but it was profile to her, and walked across the other side into the tree line. And then she basically thought, wow, I can't believe what I saw. So she turned around, was walking back toward your way. She took about 3 steps, turned back around. Something told her to turn around, she said, and she re-squatted again, and she was looking in that direction that the Sasquatch went into, and out close to where that Sasquatch went into, this creature, this unknown creature came out. She saw it. And
Right.
that's when she described that it was really odd how it stepped out of the tree line. It was very mechanical or glitchy. But
Right. And all I can say to that story is I didn't see it. I was down in the creek, so all
right,
I'm going by is a woman that is pale. And this is right. We've been out in the summer all, so she's really tan. She came down there, and I mean, she was pale white, and she was shaking like it was. This was one of those Januaries where it was like,
yeah, I
January, and it was
remember.
like
Yeah,
60 degrees.
right.
So I was in a t-shirt. I didn't even have a hoodie on, and she came down and she was petrified. I mean,
Wow.
freaked out. So what she saw the second thing, and she even told me, and it was, man, when whatever we saw, the Sasquatch, whatever we saw in the creek, it was totally peaceful. Didn't scare or alarm anybody. It would just be like me looking down the creek and seeing you come out of the woods and walk
Hmm.
across the creek. Oh,
Okay.
there's, not, it wouldn't freak me out at all. There's a dude down there. He's probably fish, doing some, there's
Yeah.
just a dude walking across the creek. That's exact. There was no fear, no nothing. But when she came back out of the deal and she said it wasn't, and that's what she told me. She said that the Sasquatch just came out of the little break right there, that little 20-foot break of woods, and just walked straight across the clearing and went right into the other woods. And when you get to the other woods, it's about a 5-minute car drive until you get to the next clearing. And you are when you go into the woods there, like we've talked with, earlier, when you go into the woods there, you're in the woods.
Yeah, I believe it. I believe it. It's I mean, that's not usually at your WMAs or like the BLM lands in other states, they don't manage any of the thickness typically. They leave it pristine. The only
Yeah,
thing that a lot of the wildlife um,
they
department
make the clearings.
they make the clearings and they leave these food plots out. And sometimes farmers in the area they'll bring ATVs in an area to harvest. They'll plant some soy and clover for the deer, things like that. And sometimes they'll bring farming implement equipment in there to bale some of the Johnson grass, and
Yeah,
like
that's
they do here.
right. The game department, they come in there twice a year, and they cut down, and they're the same fields in the same place every year, and they come in and they mow them down, and that's what they do. And this was right. They do that right before deer season, so if you would have gone there in October, it would have looked like a freshly mowed front yard. So the grass there in January, which didn't grow much, was probably only ankle deep, maybe that more. But
Right.
you go there in the summertime, and that stuff could be 6 foot tall.
Oh yeah, yeah. You don't have well, and there's no hunting during that time, obviously either. But it allows, at least in the fall and into the winter before deer season ends January 15th, it allows for open shooting lanes, so to speak.
Right.
And so how fast? There's a lot of interesting parts to that that's really fascinating. The part that I've never heard on any show that I'm aware of. I don't get a chance to watch or listen, really watch and listen to a lot of podcast shows. I don't get a lot of time anymore, but I've never heard of anyone actually observing while they're playing music or have a radio up, actually observing a Sasquatch moving to the beat of the music being played. So that's a first for me.
Yeah,
Uh,
because we were playing a song, and I mean, I was sitting there. Like I said, I don't have to look at my strings anymore. I've played professionally, so I don't. It's not like I'm sitting there staring at my strings to play. I usually close my eyes and look around when I'm playing guitar. And
right.
I sat there and I saw that thing, and I sat there and went through half of the song. And I mean, it sat there for a while, and it didn't move until I put the guitar down and stood up and walked about 10 foot towards it. Like, no, and that's when I said, "Oh my God, look down there, look at that." And I'm like, and then it stood up, and as it was walking across the creek, I'm like, I never believed in this. I've always wanted to, but I never believed in this.
Yeah, that's what your ex-girlfriend was saying. That you said you were like, what's that? And then she's like, "What are you talking about?" And then you said, "I never believed in this stuff. I can't
Yeah,
believe it's real."
yeah, there was a few more profanity words in that statement, but
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And, yeah,
Well,
but
yeah,
yeah,
it's shocking. It's shocking.
yeah,
We're going to move into kind of this next story that has nothing to do with what we just got through talking about.
right.
And this
So,
was something that you mentioned to me during our conversation, and I did want to talk about it. Now, I'll kind of set at the stage based on what you told me, and then I'll let you kind of describe it. You do have, so the last story was first person based, and then your ex girlfriend, that was first person, what she saw. And then you talk about, what she didn't see and things like that, but only what you saw. So let's get into the second story, which is totally unrelated. And you have some first person involvement in it, and you
right.
talk to the person that this happened to. And this occurred at a well known deer hunting place. And I'll just let you take it from there on what this person said, what they said they saw, and then your involvement in this encounter story.
The way this place worked is and this was down in the swamp bottoms below a lake, and that's where we would hunt. And you pull up in the morning, and he had a driveway right there, and on the front of the board, because he would lease this out to 4 or 5 hunters, and he had built blinds, like big tall ones
Oh,
that you
okay.
that you could crawl up a ladder, and like, had a little deck built, permanent blinds, because it was on his private property, and he had probably 5 or 6 of them. And they had walls on them and a roof on it so you could stay dry, and real comfortable blinds. And but they were placed where we couldn't shoot each other. And when you got there, because some guys, we would, sometimes we'd go, man, let's get out there at 3 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes we wouldn't be able to get out there till 7 in the morning. So when you got there, you put there was a dry erase board on the front of the barn. And if you were, you had permission and paid your dues, when you got there, you marked your name down on which blind you were in. That way, let's say you were in blind number 6. I know where blind 6 is. I didn't come walking through your lane, and mess your hunting up.
Hmm.
So that's how you would tell everybody where you were at. Well, one of the guys that was one of the guys, he wasn't a friend of mine. I only knew him from just, at the end of the day, sometimes we'd meet up by cars, and I've met him a few times. So I'm not a friend of mine, but we had conversation, and he was a military vet that went through extreme war. Not just not just being in the military. He was in battle.
Hmm.
So and bad battle, and he retired, and he was hunting out there. And so we went, me and my other friend that turned me on to this place. We went out there hunting, and he hunted one, and I hunted one. And we came back at the end of the day, and the owner of the place, the guy that's got the YouTube videos and stuff, that he said, the one that said he's seen Bigfoot at his back went all this stuff.
Oh,
And
right.
man, I won't name a name, but he's like, man, that he came back, and he crawled up, he pulling himself on the ground. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, he was on the ground pulling himself, and said that he broke his leg. It didn't even tell me how it happened or know nothing.
Okay, so
And
let's back up just a second here so I'm on track with you. I'm sorry to interrupt. So the gentleman that owns this property, it was telling you that this military gentleman was in one of the tree stands, and he went outside and he saw this guy, this military man, was crawling on the ground toward him.
Right,
And that's
crawling
okay.
on his ground towards his car.
Okay, go ahead
And
then. Go ahead.
and crawled to his ground, and the guy said, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "No, I'm not okay." Got in the car, shut the door, and left, and pulled out of there. And he said, "Man, I could tell that dude's leg was broke."
Oh,
And I'm like,
man.
"Whoa!" And I'm like, "Okay." I'm like, "What?" I looked at the board, and I remember he was in tree stand number 6. So I'm like, he's like, "Man, that guy was scared." And I'm like, "Man, wonder what's up?" So I went over to tree stand number 6 because I knew nobody was there. This guy had left, and I crawled up in the stand, and there was a $1,500 bow, $400 worth of arrows, expensive ones. His jacket, because this was early. I think it was. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to lie about the date, but it was early enough to where he left his jacket, because we were hunting in our t-shirts. Because sometimes in October, it gets 75
Oh, sure,
degrees.
sure. Right, right.
And so he, I crawled up in the deer stand, and there's his bow. There's his backpack. There's all his stuff. There's everything. And I'm like, what the heck? And so instead of just leaving it out there, I, as a good person, I grabbed his backpack and I put it on, and grabbed his bows and his arrows and all that stuff, and grabbed his GPS, everything that he had up there. I grabbed all that, and he even left his lunch up there. I grabbed everything and brought it down and stuck it in the trunk of my car. And the owner of the property came out, and he's like, "I don't know what happened to that guy." He's like, "It looked like his leg was broke, and it looked like I'm like, he just crawled in his car." And I asked him if he was okay, and he said, "No, I'm not." And he said he slammed the door and didn't even say nothing else and left. So I asked the owner. I told him, because the owner of this place always sits on his front porch the whole day. That's all he does. He's probably sitting on his front porch now, but when you leave, he always comes out and talks to you. And that's when he told me. And I'm like, "Hey, can you give me his phone number? I've got all his gear, and it's about $2,000 worth of gear." So he gave me his number, and I called this guy, and who the guy lived up in Kansas and would travel down here to hunt. And so I called him, and I'm like, "Hey, man, I've got all your gear and everything in my trunk." And I'm like, you wanna meet up, and I can give it back to you?" He's like, "Yes, I'd love to do that. I'd love to get my gear back." And I'm like, "Well, you want to meet me back at the property?" And he said, "HE double hockey sticks, no." He said, "I'll meet you at the store 10 miles down, and meet you there. I'm not ever going back on that property." So I met up with this guy, and gave him his gear back. And I'm like, "What happened?" And he's like, "I'm sitting in my stand." And he said, you could tell it started shaking him up, even though it was like a month and a half later. And I might be wrong on my dates or times or whatever, but it was like a month and a half later when we finally hooked up.
Right.
And he started telling me the story, and he got shook up. And he's like, "I was sitting in my stand," and he said, "I was waiting on deer." And he said there was a small flock of turkeys came out. And he said, it was turkey season. There's a point where a deer season during archery that it's turkey season too. And so he was like, "I was waiting on them to come out." And he said, right down in front of me, this is his exact words. And like you said, I didn't see I'm second party to this except for getting his gear out,
Right.
and talking to him. He said something came from right out of the woods. He said it looked like the thing off of Van Helsing, or looked like the thing off of American Werewolf in London. He said it came out of the woods, and with its right paw or hand, it was on all fours. So it looked like a werewolf. It came out of the woods, grabbed this turkey by the neck that quick and bit its head off and had the turkey in its right hand and had the dead turkey there that he just bit the head off of. And he said, I'm sitting in my stand kind of freaking out. And he said, this thing looked at me like he knew I was there and looked at me right in the eye and gave me, I could feel tension. I could feel like I'm looking at you, dude, like I can see you. And this trained military guy, which is in a very high branch of military, said that he freaked out, and he said, I got out of the stand. I got to the first step, and I was so scared. I jumped down and I broke my leg. And he's like, I just got the cast off a couple days ago. And he said, this thing looked at me like it knew I was there. He said it had kind of glowing eyes and looked at me right in the eye. And he's like, I know that thing knew I was sitting there watching him. And I gave him back his gear, and he's like, I'll never go back out there again. I don't care. And he's like, thanks for getting my gear, and I appreciate it. He says, I'm just going to stay up in Kansas. And I'm like, okay. And that was the end of the conversation. But he was shaken up a month later.
Wow.
So, and there was the Discovery show where they went down there below this lake and they went there and filmed. And it was on the Discovery Channel where they went right here looking for Sasquatch. So that wasn't a Sasquatch sighting because he said it looked like a werewolf, man.
That's what it correlates to the Dogman creature. And the thing when he said with glowing eyes, did he mean like they were an amber color, a yellow?
Yeah, he said they had like the when that Sasquatch on my story. When it looked at me, it just looked like brown eyes, like just regular eyes, like no dark illumination, no glare, nothing like that. But this guy said this thing looked up at me and the way he said it, I don't know if he said it looked up at me and knew I was there with these red glowing eyes.
And it was red glowing eyes.
Like he said, you could see like you see a cat or an alligator or something at night.
Okay, so he could make out. Yeah, it wasn't like black pupils or anything. He could see that there was some color to it.
And this was in the middle of the day.
This middle of the day, yeah. Yep. Wow. Yeah, yeah. Well, a lot of people are having encounters every week throughout the year, throughout the day, and they don't know what they saw. And they want to be able to talk to somebody. And so if the people out there that you yourself, you're hearing this story and it resonates with something you saw, give me a call and we can talk about it. I've been able to kind of shed some light on a couple things. I can't promise that every time. But if you call the toll-free number at 866-306-8085, again, that's 866-306-8085. Leave a message. Give me a little time to return your call, but I will call you just like I did this gentleman, and we can talk and we can document what you saw. Thanks again so much, and I appreciate it, and we'll stay in contact.
And if I can, at the very end, thank you very much. I appreciate your time. And so everybody listening knows I didn't get paid anything for this. I'm not getting no likes. I'm not putting it on my Facebook. I'm not putting it on it. I'm not even telling nobody about this conversation. So this is my story, and it was as truthful as I could be. So I thank you for your time, sir.
Oh, you're so welcome. God bless you, and we'll stay in contact.
All right. You have a good one, my friend.
You too. Take care.
All right.
Okay, I wanted to do just a summary for you guys, and if you like these summaries, let me know in the comment section. I'm going to start doing some of this just to kind of rehash what did we hear, some interesting points I'm going to bring up, just to see what you guys think too. So in listening to this show here, one of the things after I talked to both the young lady separate and, of course, this ex-boyfriend separate, they broke up a long time ago and they haven't talked since, really. And so this was something that was separate account. Both acknowledged they haven't talked to each other in a very, very long time. And so this ex-boyfriend, he just said, I saw it and I wanted to just give my 2 cents of what I saw that day, if you don't mind. I said, no, I want to know. So I'll just kind of put that there to start with. I thought it was interesting that this place was a very difficult place to get to. Very gnarly, if you will. You can't get to it just with a car. The ex-boyfriend said that you have to have a four-wheel drive. That sometimes if the water's up, the water will be about mid-door, midway on your door, so you might get some water leakage coming from the underside of your door of your 4x4. So it's a very difficult place to get through. So you kind of want to make sure the time of year is right. If there's water rushing down some of those creeks, you won't be able to get to this location. So very remote area. The game department doesn't allow a lot of things on this WMA, so I thought that was interesting too. So it's kind of what we said. The more remote, it doesn't have to be, but it kind of fits this picture of remoteness, if you will, where very difficult places to get to, very, very little people traffic, all those things. It really sets up this perfect scenario of these creatures being at this particular site. You've got water, you've got tons of cover, you've got wild game, so food sources, very little people traffic to mess with you. So why wouldn't you be there, right? What did you think of... I thought it was interesting when he said that the ex-girlfriend, the young lady I interviewed at first, she said that he never believed in this stuff. Her ex-boyfriend, he just said that I never believed in this stuff before, but in a matter of milliseconds, he stood up, and as he walked about 10 yards, this Sasquatch stood up, turned, calmly took a couple steps, was across the creek, took some more steps, was up the embankment, a very steep embankment, mind you, and wasn't in a big hurry and just left. And in a matter of milliseconds, he changed his point of view. He went from a non-believer to, I can't believe this is real. So I thought that was interesting, and that's usually what happens. People have this belief that there's just one Sasquatch, or they're only in the northwest part of the United States, or whatever it is, and all of a sudden it changes on a dime, changes their belief system, if you will. I thought it was interesting that he said that something caught his eye as he was playing, and he was looking around, and he was playing because he had the song memorized, and then something out of the periphery of his vision, he caught something. He saw it swaying back and forth. And so it must have been enjoying the music, which, what's that old music calms the savage beast kind of thing? And I thought that was interesting. That's the first time I had heard where someone was playing music and they got a visual of a Sasquatch, or any creature for that matter, kind of moving back and forth. He was just minding his own business, just calm and quiet. And that when it got up, it wasn't in a hurry. Once the Sasquatch saw the guy approaching, it was still some yards away. I think the ex-boyfriend said that he was 60 to 75 yards. I think that's what he said. That it stood up calmly, it turned, and it just walked away. But it was its walk. We couldn't, even us running, we couldn't equal its natural normal gait cycle. So he said it covered a lot of ground fast. I guess it felt that, they weren't a threat. It obviously wasn't a threat, and that the people there wasn't a threat. So it just kind of got up and took off, started walking, minding its own business. So I thought that he corroborated a couple things here. He was very honest. I thought he said that he did not see this orange ball that his ex-girlfriend saw. He said that once he started looking at this, he, as you heard, I don't believe in this stuff. I think, well, wait a minute. What the heck? I think it's a Sasquatch. Well, his friend, who had been behind him, took off running down the creek. And this gentleman had a bad back, so he was kind of lagging behind his friend. Well, as you're going down in that creek, it kind of goes down more, and the creek bank is up higher. So he didn't know who was doing what at camp. He said that his friend's girlfriend, I think, remained behind. She wasn't going anywhere, but this ex-boyfriend didn't know where his girlfriend was going to be, his ex-girlfriend, where she was going to be. He didn't know where she was at. So he didn't see the orange ball, and he didn't know where she went. And then, but he did corroborate that he saw the Sasquatch and that his friend caught just a little bit of brown, he said, going into the trees. And that he did corroborate also that his ex-girlfriend, she come running out of that open field in a frantic panic. And she was kind of like, something's chasing me, something's chasing me. She was really, really scared, which that's what she told me too. And that he told her to get by the fire, get something to drink, sit down. So he went to his truck, grabbed his gun, and him and his friend went back to that open field area, and they didn't see a thing. He said, I didn't see what she saw, but she told me she was in a panic. He goes, she was terrified, and that he didn't see what she saw, but they didn't see anything. He told me they didn't think to investigate, because they had to get out of there once nightfall. You got to get out of there as quickly as can. You can't stay the night. So it's a day excursion. And he said, I don't like getting out of there at night because everything changes. Even though we've been back there a lot, everything looks a lot different. And he goes, you can get lost very fast back there. He goes, we go back there in the day and we try to leave during the day. So they only had so much time to sit by the campfire. And of course, when they went back to the campfire, everybody was quiet. They were just trying to process what the heck they saw. And so I thought it was interesting where there was some corroboration to what she saw and did, and mainly what the saw and did, and then what he saw and did. So they did link up together very well. And to end here, I'll just, the dog man, that story he was talking about, this dog man sighting that I thought was terrifying. I thought it was interesting that this occurred to a veteran, very seasoned veteran that experienced some, possibly some overseas combat, and that he just wanted to get out hunting, and that even after experiencing some overseas combat, a lot of your veterans see some horrific things, and they do some very heroic things. And so to come back home and to fall out of a stand trying to get down and break your leg, I mean, that had to be terrifying. He saw something. To see these dogman creatures, this is like one story after another. It's never a good account when people see these dogman creatures. I've never, out of all the interviews that I've done, I've never come across one that was a pleasant experience. I'll put it that way. So I can't even imagine the horror that this poor veteran falling out of this tree, breaking his leg, and when he was coming back I don't know how far it was from that deer stand to the back to where his car was, but the owner of the property always sits, as you heard, on this porch, and he saw this guy crawling, and he crawled up into he goes, hey, you okay? And the guy didn't say a word, and he got in his car and just left. Didn't have any gear, nothing. And so this ex-boyfriend, he told the landowner, he said, hey, his number was by his tree stand. Do you mind if I call him? I didn't see any gear with him. So this ex-boyfriend, as you heard, went out to get his gear, and he said, Lance, there was, as you heard, $1,500 worth of gear still in the stand, still up in the tree. And I can tell you right now, as a hunter, you don't leave your gear behind. You absolutely do not leave your gear, because it adds up fast. It gets expensive. So I think, of course, as you heard, the guy, he said, yeah, I want my gear. He called him, and I don't think he was ever going to, I don't know if he was going to call back and get his gear. I really don't, because I think he was going to be concerned if he did call. The landowner was going to say, why did you just go and leave and not say a word? And I don't think he wanted to have to explain himself. I think he was that frightened. He didn't want to be ridiculed or embarrassed about what he saw, and because he knew what he saw. And so when this ex-boyfriend of this girl, when he was out there, of course, the separate story here with this dogman encounter, but I think when he called this guy, the guy was relieved that he called him and that he goes, yeah, I want my gear. And then he relayed, of course, to this guest that I interviewed that, yeah, I saw this creature come out, and bite the head off that turkey and turn around and look at me. So I thought that showed what many of these interviews, these dogman interviews, that it has this boldness, this intellect and this nonchalant, I don't give a damn if you see me or not. I'm going to let you see me, and I mean business kind of thing, right? And it turned around and looked at the hunter like, yeah, I'm here, and I see you too. I see you. And it left. That is a very frightening scene to have encountered right there. I can't imagine that poor guy, to this day, what he thinks about that. So he was from Kansas, and from talking to this guest here, he said, yeah, this guy won't be back. He said he'll never come back again. So my prayers to that poor guy that experienced that. But you got to be careful out there, folks, right? It's hard to plan when and where you'll see what you're going to see and when you're going to see it. So just be mindful of, have a good time and try to go out with a group rather than being by yourself, and let people know where you're going. It's always safe that way. As you know, sharing is always good medicine. If you or someone you know have had an encounter and it's been difficult to share, I understand. I was there. My brothers were there for a long time. Call the number that I've got, the Nationwide Report Hotline. It's 866-306-8085. Again, that's 866-306-8085. And I will return your call as soon as possible. I will keep your name and your occupation and whatever you'd like me to keep confidential. I will do that for you. That's my policy, and that's my respect to you. Until next time, guys, take care. And this is Lance with Monster 911.